What is going on, gentlemen? That's right, I didn't even include ladies because I am confident that there will not be any ladies viewing this broadcast because it is competitive Draft League Pokemon. So, yeah, there's that. So, gentlemen, I hope you guys are ready for a nice and hype round 2 of the United Draft League playoffs, as I am here to present to you all the 3 games that have been played so far of round 2. There's 4 in total, but Gypsy King versus Clover 48, aka Parker, has to be postponed until this upcoming Tuesday because they were not able to schedule due to Gypsy having to travel for an important wedding and such. And obviously we don't want playoff games to be decided by forfeits, so I was definitely cool with the extension, as long as Clover was cool with the extension, and he's excited to have this game against Gypsy. So that will be played on Tuesday, and I just don't really have a lot of time to record during the week, so I figured it's just better for me to get it out of the way now, and I'll bring you guys at least these 3. So hopefully you enjoy. So sit back, relax, pay attention because we're going to have some good stuff. Don't pay too close attention because sometimes I forget my mechanics. So last week I forgot a bunch of mechanics, but hopefully this week I'll bounce back. It's been a year off. I'm starting from scratch. I erased all the Pokemon knowledge from my head, so I'm learning the game all over again. Hopefully we can make that climb up the ladder and become a Pokemon master like no one ever was. But this isn't about me right now, because the game that I have presented to you guys right here is the first one that was played. So I'm going to order these I'm going to air these in the order that they were played, rather. Which the first one was actually between John W. and MaranVaran, which was a pretty hype matchup because, as I mentioned last week, Maran was someone who just squeaked into the playoffs, which I was happy about because he was just very consistent with building and scheduling and getting all his games done on time, and it's just a general positive. He's just like a positive contributor to the league and the activeness of the chat, which is really appreciated. So it was nice to see him get in, and he's kind of had a lot of momentum going into the playoffs, as well as last week he played really well and prepped really well against Ice. I know there was some hacks that really did affect the way the game was played, but he just did really well, so can't take that away from him. And he played against John W's team week 1, but that was when Jolt had it, because Jolt started as one of the coaches in the league, but just due to time constraints and burnout and stuff, he ultimately ended up, it was worth dropping. So I added John W to the league, who was, like I said, not initially the coach as it was Jolt, and he took the team at 1-0, made some changes, but left a lot of the same Pokemon, as I believe these 5 over here, not the Mimikyu, were all on the original team, and he has just been so dominant. He was, I think, as good as 5-0, and then I think he might have lost a couple games, but ultimately it came down to him versus Ben to decide who would get the buys in the X conference, and they had to play each other the last week, or who would get the first seed rather. And John did win, so he finished with a 6-2 record, a very high differential. He's just been absolutely dominant, and he is widely regarded as one of the best players in the entire format. And I hadn't really gotten the chance to see him play that much before I took a break from Pokemon. And now that I've been back and have gotten to watch him play, both in just some DPL games, but mostly UDL, because that's obviously my league, so I'm going to see all of his games. He has been absolutely fantastic, and I could definitely vouch for him being a top player, because he has been dominant this season. Just most of his wins, 'cause that's the thing, just having a great record is one thing, but most of his wins just haven't even been close. He's really been blowing people out, if I remember correctly, at least. He's looked really, really strong. So Moran does have experience playing against this team, but he played against it when there was a different coach, and obviously John made some changes. So this should be an interesting matchup, as John has some really, really threatening offense on his team, whereas Moran brought some kind of niche picks, which is cool. He's been bringing this Sigilyph a lot lately. He seems to really like this Pokemon and makes good use of it. And he also brought the Vikavolt, which I love, although I don't see people using it that well in draft too often. I can't say I've seen that many people use it in general, but I build with it in OU a lot, and it's actually a fantastic Pokemon, especially because of this Pokemon right here, Landorus Theory, and it takes advantage of so many Lando sets. I know Continental Crush is pretty popular, but Scarf is just so popular. You know, a lot of the Stealth Rock sets, like the more defensive ones that aren't packing a Z move, just do not typically have a lot to hit Vikavolt, and with Sub, it pressures a lot of OU Pokemon, so it's really, really cool, and I'm curious to see what Maran can have it do in this game. So we'll get right into the battle here. I'll try to go kind of quickly as John leads with Shaman and Maran leads with the Vikavolt, and he goes right for the Discharge here. I was kind of expecting the Bug Buzz or something that could hit the Shaman a little harder, but perhaps he was predicting the Shaman would switch, as here he goes right for the Roost. And now I'm thinking for sure this is probably a Charty Vikavolt, because Vikavolt has great bulk. Not great, but pretty solid, especially on the physical side. So I would imagine that you could EV it to live a Z Flying, you know, a Supersonic Sky Strike from Landorus T, but especially from full, I don't know about after Stealth Rocks, but from full, I would actually imagine you could live one. Maybe Adamant is a roll, but Vikavolt is deceptively bulky, so I'm thinking that he's probably going to be something like Charty Berry here, as if Lando wants to bring the Continental Crush, which is something that wouldn't be too unlikely considering he's got things like Talonflame and Rotom Wash, and obviously Vikavolt too. The Charty Berry could come and go a long way, as he could take a Continental Crush, burn the Z move, and then get off a big HP Ice so that if it doesn't kill, obviously he won't have a Continental Crush for things like Rotom anymore. So, like I said, I'm expecting the Charty here. It seems like it's all set up, and John does pop the Z move, and it is Continental Crush, but the Vikavolt just drops. It is not Charty Berry, so I wonder what the item was on that. As here he brings in the Rotom, and John pivots out into the Shaman, and Maran makes a good double going right into the Talonflame. So here I'm like, this is interesting. I wonder if this Talonflame is something like Band. Band looks really, really good here. Or SD. I know he's got Z eligibility on this Talonflame, so something like an SDZ Talon could be really, really good here. As, even if, like, we did see what is likely the HP Rock on the Shaman before, but I don't think HP Rock would kill a Talonflame, especially considering the Shaman isn't Life Orb or Expert Belt or anything like that. So he's already revealed the leftovers. So I'm kind of expecting a Swords Dance here, but it turns out John switches out to the Necrozma, and Maran just goes right for the Supersonic Sky Strike, which was definitely kind of odd to me, because maybe I'm wrong, and maybe the Talon wouldn't be able to live a Hidden Power Rock, but I don't know, like, maybe he calced the damage on Vikavolt, and it was a pretty offensive Shaman or something. I don't know. It just didn't really seem like it to me, because if it was really offensive, Vikavolt is not that bulky on the special side unless he EV'd it to be, so only doing like 35% to that just makes me think that this Talonflame could have lived, but yeah, who knows? I could be wrong, as he goes for the Sky Strike right then and there, and this Necrozma comes in and takes it really, really well. So that doesn't bode very well for Maran here, as you're going to see, because now the Necrozma just heals up, and Talonflame does reveal the Swords Dance, which is why I think just going right for the Sky Strike was a misplay there, because had he gone for the Swords Dance on the Necrozma switch, he got a guaranteed kill with Sky Strike, because even if, let's say, John wanted to go into something like Mimikyu, and the Sky Strike is wasted on the Disguise, at least in the next turn he's got +2 Brave Bird to click on anything. Like, he doesn't have a flying resist, so even if he brought in Landorus, if it didn't knock it out, it would do a ton of damage, and we know that this Landorus is not Choice Scarf, so it's not like he'd have to switch out. He likely outspeeds the Landorus, so I think that was a misplay on Maran's part. Is here you're going to see he goes for the Flare Blitz, and it does a good chunk, but he takes the Rocky Helmet and the Recall, and it actually puts him in range of the Photon Geyser, and he just gets taken right out, and all he did was 7 extra percent, because the Sky Strike did 53, so he really didn't gain anything from that exchange there. So this Shaman is at 96%, and this Necrozma is at 37%, so he lost 2 really solid Pokemon against John's team. Like, I don't know how great the Vikavolt would have been outside of of potentially luring Landorus if he was Chardy, but that Talonflame could have just put in so much work right now had he Swords Danced on the switch. But yeah, so I don't know if Moran had a good reason for that, but I think that really set him back a lot, as John's in a fantastic position. He's just going to recover up on the Muck, and the Muck actually does reveal the Toxic, which is definitely nice to put this Necrozma on a timer, especially if he was something like Swords Dance, as here he just goes right for the Earthquake, and the Muck ends up going for the Curse, so the Muck's going to be able to set up on that all day. So here he brings in the Landorus, and that forces Moran to pivot out, as John just makes the safe Earthquake play, switches out on the Rotom, as Moran makes another double going into the Sigilyph here. So now he's going to fire off an Air Slash as John goes into his Infernape. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe he just found it to be his most expendable, but that's kind of surprising considering he's got a Mawile. Infernape is really nice at checking Mawile. Obviously offensively, not defensively, but it could take Sucker Punches pretty well, which is important. And just generally has great coverage against the rest of Moran's team. So perhaps he really thought that this was going to go for a move that couldn't kill Infernape, or like he was going to try to set up, I really don't know. I don't know what, maybe he was afraid of like the Cosmic Power Psycho Shift set or something. I could not tell you. As here, he takes the Infernape right out, and now he's going to go into his Mawile on the Mimikyu, as John just goes right for the Shadow Claw, revealing that he is Life Orb, and that does a pretty good chunk to Mawile, even through the Intimidate, as Moran is going to make a good play, going for his Stealth Rocks, not bothering attacking the Necrozma and taking some chip damage. So here he's going to go right into the Sigilyph, as even if he has Toxic, he can't touch a Magic Guard Sigilyph, as he's going to go right for the Ice Beam, as John brings in his Scizor. Now, I would imagine that he's aware Sigilyph also learns Heat Wave, and there's going to be probably a good chance that it'll have the Heat Wave to hit the Scizor. Obviously, Air Slash would hit it pretty hard, as it's just a reliable stab move, but if the Scizor is pretty specially bulky, or just bulky in general, and the Sigilyph doesn't have enough special attack investment, there's a good chance Scizor can roost up on those and set up on that. So there's a good chance he's going to have the Heat Wave there. And I think John knows this, as he just Mega Evolves and goes right for the Bullet Punch to get some damage off, as he does reveal the Heat Wave, and he just knocks out the Scizor. So all of a sudden, Moran has brought himself back into a pretty good position, as this Sigilyph looks like it kind of just beats most of John's team. Depending on how fast the Landorus is, like he might be able to outspeed and hit that with Ice Beam. And he definitely outspeeds the Necrozma, and I think the Shaman as well. So this Sigilyph is in a good spot all of a sudden. So now here he's going to bring the Mimikyu, and he's forced to switch out and go into his Rotom Wash, as John goes right for the Shadow Claw. Now here he's going to Swords Dance, and Moran actually goes right for the Discharge here, as that breaks the Disguise, and it does get the Paralysis. So that was definitely worst case scenario for John, as had he had the Play Rough, which I would imagine he does have, he would have been able to knock out the Rotom the next turn. Like, I know Shadow Claw, +2 Shadow Claw probably wouldn't have knocked him out unless he got a crit, but the Play Rough I'm pretty sure would have knocked him out there. So that was really unfortunate, because he'd have a 69% Mimikyu at +2, which from here doesn't necessarily just win, but it obviously makes for some interesting 50-50s with Mimikyu versus Mawile in terms of Sucker Punch. So he goes for the Discharge again on this following turn, and the Play Rough does knock him clean out. So that really mattered a lot, because had he not gotten paralyzed there, then it would have come down to, for example, like let's say Moran brings a Mawile next, which he has to. His course of action would kind of have to just be to either Play Rough or just go for, if he has like Iron Head, or just something that can knock out the Mimikyu, which I would imagine would be Play Rough would be his best move. Yeah, he would go either for Play Rough or Sucker Punch, because I don't think a +2 Shadow Sneak knocks out a Mega Mawile from this range. So it becomes a 50-50. Does Moran Play Rough, or does he Sucker Punch, and does John Shadow Claw or Shadow Sneak. So that game would have hinged entirely on that 50-50. And yeah, as you're going to see, he does pivot his Mimikyu out into the Necrozma, forcing the Mawa to take some chip. And here Moran brings in the Sigalith and is able to just start firing off attacks here. As it turns out, John's only move to really hit this thing is Photon Geyser, and it turns out that Moran does have the Roost, so it's just looking like John does not have anything for this Sigalith, as now he's just going to be able to go right for an Air Slash, and he actually misses. I wonder why he went for the Air Slash there and not the Ice Beam. But he goes for the Shadow Sneak here on the Sigalith, and Moran goes for the Roost, which is kind of a risk. I guess he's bulky enough to take a Shadow Claw from full, but if the Shadow Claw crits, then that would have knocked out the Sigalith, even if he is bulky, I would imagine. So that was a bit of a risky play, but it was a good one, as it worked out pretty nicely. And now he's going to be able to just fire off his last Shadow Sneak on the Mawile. Moran is just going to attack here, making sure that the Lando can't sub or anything like that. And now he can just bring in the Sigalith and fire off an Ice Beam. Now, I would imagine, because it looks like the Sigalith is actually really bulky, it looks like he's a bulky Life Orb Magic Guard set. So he can't take any damage from Stealth Rocks, and his attacks still hit with doing pretty good damage, because Sigalith has over, I think it has a little over 100 special attack. It literally might be like 101 or something. So he, I would imagine, was out of range of a Stone Edge, but still, like, a Stone Edge could crit. It just kind of came down to how fast both of them were. Like, maybe John knew, based on how this had outsped the Shaman, or outsped maybe something else on his team earlier, that if this is faster than his Lando. I don't know exactly, but here he just goes for the Ice Beam, and here he pivots into Muck. I guess a little afraid that the Shaman would have something to hit the Sigalith and outspeed it, but that procs the Berry and the Muck, and he's just able to fire off Toxics here, as the Shaman just really can't do that much to Muck, as he's going to fire off another Toxic and puts this Lando on a timer, as here he's just going to go right for the Curse, as it's going to help him live another hit. He does recycle here, but he should have just Fire Punched. It doesn't really end up mattering, as this is going to be a double down anyway, but it would have, I guess, put him in a little bit of a better position against the Shaman on the following turn. But either way, this Sigalith just kind of 1v1s the Shaman, as you're going to see it actually does outspeed it. So I think there was probably a good chance it outsped the Lando. But once Moran paralyzed the Mimikyu, things really kind of went downhill quickly for John, because he's just going to keep being able to spam attacks, and the Air Slashes do enough to weaken the Shaman, and the Shaman is almost out of syntheses. So yeah, Moran is able to pick up a really, really big win. I don't think a lot of people were expecting this, because John was just so dominant this season, but Moran is the type of guy who, when he just starts to get rolling, he is tough to beat. I remember in ITL, he played last season, and I didn't play in that one, but I did the power rankings and stuff, and I heard a lot of good things about Moran. It was his first time joining, and I liked his team, but he just got off to a pretty bad start, and he just started losing game after game after game, to the point where he was like nearly out of playoff contention, and then he just turned his entire season around and just started winning every single game, made it all the way to finals, where he ultimately played AkkiVGC in what was a good game that Akki ended up winning. So even though he didn't win the finals there, he still made such a great run at the end, which nobody was expecting, because he was just struggling, and I don't know if he didn't like his team, but he just, I think was kind of bummed out and tilted, but he turned it all around, and it looks like that's kind of what he's doing here too. Now, I don't want to say that the paralysis cost John the game entirely, as it, like I said, would have come down to a true 50-50. At least I think it was a true 50-50. What he could have potentially done was switched out the Mimikyu on the Mawile and tried to get more chip on the Mawile to potentially come in with Mimikyu later and sweep. I don't know if Muck, for example, was in range of a play rough from where it was at the time. So I don't know for sure. I don't know if that was a true 50-50, but it looks like it was, because it was just one of those situations where if John gets the 50-50 right, he wins. It's just he kind of wins on the spot. The only thing that would potentially have him lose is if he missed a play rough against the Muck. But that really mattered because, like I said, if John got the 50-50 right, he won, and once Moran got the 50-50 right, this Sigilyph was basically unstoppable for John's team, and it really just went in and took out the rest of his team. So congratulations to Moran on what has just been an awesome run. He's now in the semifinals, and like I said, he was someone who just squeaked into playoffs, kind of losing his confidence toward the middle end of the season there. So I'm definitely happy for him making this great of a run. I do feel bad for John, unfortunately, going down to what was a 30% paralysis chance. But at the end of the day, I guess what are you going to do? It's just the nature of the game that we play, but that doesn't make it any easier to cope with. So I'm sorry that his great season had to go down like that, but regardless, it was still a really good game. I hope they both enjoyed it, and we will move on to the next game that was played, as it was Ben, the number 2 seed in the X Conference and the other bye holder, versus AkkiVGC, the GOAT himself, the king, the legend, Gypsy King Hu, AkkiVGC, true GOAT, and he is really getting into it. He is putting in the time. He's putting in the work. He does not want to let this opportunity to win another championship at the very end of Gen 7 slip by. So he was putting in a lot of prep for this game, and this is a very interesting one because it's not just like he was putting in extra time to this game. He played Ben earlier in the season, and Ben didn't change a single thing about his team, I don't believe. And Ben whooped Akki 5-0 or 4-0. I can't remember if it was 5 or 4, but he won by a pretty big margin. And it was just kind of surprising because Akki is such a good builder and player that usually he is the type to make those kinds of big balls and flexy plays that could put you in a really bad spot if it does not work out. But he, in that game, or normally, if he does make those mistakes, like I said, he's so good that he usually is able to bounce back and at least make it close. But in the other games, or in the game versus Ben, he just took the momentum and ran with it and just steamrolled over Akki. So I don't know how he feels based on the changes he's made throughout the season, because they played week 1, so he's made a lot of changes to his team. Not a lot, but he's made all 4 transactions, which is as much as you can make. So I wonder what he feels in terms of his matchup versus his new team versus his old team against Ben. But he was really struggling in prep. He was putting a lot of time in, and ultimately he just had to leave himself to be open to certain things because Ben's team just seemed to have a pretty good matchup in a lot of ways. For example, the Weavile is just crazy against Akki's team. So we'll see if Ben is able to really capitalize on that, or if Akki has enough techs and has put enough time into the prep to be able to mitigate that. So we will get right into this game as Ben leads with the Serp, Akki leads with the Crook, and he's going to switch out, fearing the Leaf Storm, as Ben makes a good play, goes right for the Glare on the Torn. That's a great thing for him to be able to paralyze, as he goes right into the Regirock here. Kirishima, named after My Hero Academia, the rock guy, and Torn is still faster than the Regirock and is able to prevent the Stealth Rocks. So here he goes right into Gallade as Ben makes a good switch into Latias, not wanting to just give him a free Gallade, but here it goes right for the Ice Beam. That does a pretty good chunk to Gallade considering how bulky it is, but I do know Akki ran max speed on this Gallade, so I'm not sure how much bulk he had, but knowing him, he's got to have some bulk. He just never really runs Gallade without any bulk investment. But Ice Beam doing 35 is kind of a lot. I was a little surprised about that, knowing that he is max speed. Made it a little more understandable, but I was wondering if this Latias does have a good amount of special attack investment. As here he goes right into his Serp and gets knocked off, but it turns out this Serp is not max speed, and Glade is actually able to outspeed and drain punches. So that kind of sucks, as he could have potentially gotten a glare off there. But he does go for the nuzzle here as the torrent comes in, and he gets the sticky web up, which would be really, really bad for Akki here, as he does not want to switch into things like Nidoking, Latias, and like I said, the Weavile, especially with sticky webs up. So he does have the defog on this Torn, but he gets the confusion here with Smeargle. Now I wonder if he had taunt on the Smeargle or not, because he's actually going to switch out here. I don't know if it's because maybe he doesn't have taunt, or if because he doesn't want to risk the confusion. But either way, Akki is able to get off the defog, which is huge for him here, as now Ben pivots right into the Weavile, as Akki makes a good switch into the Pex, and then makes a good play just hard scalding, as it does knock out the Smeargle. I wonder if that was a roll or not, just because Pex is so weak and Smeargle is obviously incredibly frail, but you would imagine that outside of whatever speed he had to run, the rest is invested in bulk. So I wonder, what the roll was on that, but it might not have been a roll, who knows. Now he brings in the Nidoking and gets so much damage off with this Earth Power. As you're going to see, Akki gets a Scald off, getting some nice damage off on the Nidoking. But what happened here was Akki actually had eject button on this Toxapex and did not know that the mechanic was Sheer Force moves do not trigger eject button. I for sure didn't know that, because mechanics, what are those? I just click buttons with powerful Pokemon and hope that things go down. But when you're talking more intricate strategy like eject button and game mechanics like how Sheer Force affects certain items, apparently that does not trigger the eject button, and Akki did not know this. He said that he kind of suspected it, so he probably should have tested it out. But that definitely kind of sucks here for him, because now he's forced to sack his Toxapex, where he would have gotten a free switch into something that can knock out this Nidoking after that Scald damage, and also gotten the Regenerator off on his Pex, being able to keep it for something like Weavile later potentially, as he's just going to sack his Nidoking off here, not having anything that he could risk switching into. So here he goes for the Icicle Spears with the Mamoswine. Now I'm just going to say, I know that this Mamoswine is Scarf, but one thing I'm curious about, especially regarding the next play, is whether Ben identified that it was Scarf, because he could have been a modest Nidoking, and based on the Earth Power damage, he could have figured that Akki might have known that he was modest Nidoking and gone into his Jolly Mamoswine to revenge it, or maybe gone into the Jolly Mamoswine to revenge it, because he went in an Icicle Spear. It's not like he Ice Sharded or anything. So he brings in the Weavile, and because he had the Sticky Web, it's very likely that this Weavile is going to be Swords Dance, in my opinion. So if this Mamoswine, if he did identify this as Scarf, it seems like Swords Dance would kind of be a bit of a no-brainer here, as Swords Dance plus Z-Move just kind of kills whatever comes in here. The only thing he can maybe do is pivot into something like a Scarvolk. But for example, like if you went into something like Crook, or you were predicting Crook to come in and maybe that be Scarf or Yachi Berry, you wouldn't go for what he's about to go for, as the Mamoswine switches out and he actually goes right for a Black Hole Eclipse, which actually turned out to be a foul play Black Hole Eclipse, because that hits a lot harder than Knockoff or Night Slash or Throat Chop when it's a Z move. So showing that he is Z move makes it even more likely that he was Swords Dance. So it's really surprising that he went for that move, unless maybe he was really expecting like a Scarvolk, as I guess maybe like something like Scarvolk could be cool against substitute mons like Superior or Latias, as if they're behind a sub Volcarona, or even just in general, like if they're not Scarfed or if there's no Sticky Web out, Volcarona can outspeed those and hit them really hard, as well as Weavile. So maybe he just felt Scarvolk had a really good matchup, and that he was hoping to catch that, trying to pivot into this Weavile. But that's the only really, either that, or like I said, maybe he didn't identify this Mamoswine as being Scarf, and maybe he thought that it was just a Jolly Mamoswine, and figured that maybe the Black Hole Eclipse could kill the Mamoswine from there. even though I'm not so sure it can. Mamoswine's pretty bulky on the physical side. I don't know the exact calc, but it is an adamant Weavile, and the foul play Black Hole Eclipse is quite strong. So I don't know. I really don't know. I'm thinking maybe he predicted a Scarf Vault, because otherwise it doesn't make sense why he wouldn't go for Swords Dance or Icicle Crash if he was predicting maybe like a Yachi or a Scarf Crook. So now he brings in the Crook, and Ben switches out his Weavile. Akki goes for the superpower, and that's actually a banded Crook. I wonder if Ben identified that because he just goes right for a hard Psyshock here. I wonder if he predicted the switch out or just realized that's choice locked and I could just go right for a Psyshock as it hits everything else way harder, as that actually does 2-hit KO this Volcarona, which is actually pretty bad for Akki because this Volk was looking like really, really good. Like it could be really, really good late game, as I think he's got Mono Bug Buzz as an attacking move, which hits the rest of his team really hard, and I think he has Wisp for the Regirock, so he just goes for 2 Psyshocks and knocks him out, because he could pivot Crook if he wants. It's just that if he pivots Crook, then that thing is in range of Ice Beam, and he either like tries to switch in Gallade, or he could try to, you know, really just doesn't make a lot of sense to risk switching in anything else back in, especially if he like went into Crook and he Reflect type, then that would be pretty bad for Akki. He'd have to predict and go for superpower in that case, which would be very risky. So here he brings back in the Mamoswine, but at this point I was still just thinking, oh, like Scarf Mamoswine just goes in here because he could just keep clicking Icicle Spear and easily either 1-hit KO or 2-hit KO Latias, depending on the Icicle Spear rolls and how many he gets. And the Weavile shouldn't be able to keep switching into Icicle Spear because Weavile is just so frail, and this is an Adamant Scarf Mamo. But he does pivot into Weavile, and to my surprise, these do a little less than I expected. He gets the 3, and it does a little less than a third. So that means Weavile has a pretty good chance to pivot into this, to pivot into the Mamoswine one more time, or 2 more times rather, because there's a 75% chance that Icicle Spear gets 3 hits or less. So if he gets 3 hits or less on those next 2 and doesn't get a crit, or just maybe really high rolls, then this Weavile should be able to take 2 more Icicle Spears, or has a good chance to be able to take 2 more Icicle Spears. So that's something I wasn't really expecting. As here, he's going to be able to just fire off an Icicle Crash and just knock this Tornadus clean out, as now he's going to bring his Mamoswine right back in, is just going to make the safe Earthquake play, as Ben makes the smart middle ground going into the Regirock, and is now going to be able to go right into his Latias, as Akki makes a good play going into Gallade, not wanting to give Latias too much initiative, as he goes for the Ice Beam here, and I feel like he's making misplays by going for Ice Beam, as here he goes for the Psyshock. As you can see, like, the Psyshock would have been keeping this Gallade so much lower, but here he's going to go for the Roost, and Akki was just kind of waiting for that, as that locks the Latias in to the Roost, and that's one of the reasons him bringing max speed Gallade was a really good bring, because as you can see, he hasn't been winning speed ties the whole game. This is a modest Latias, it's not max speed. So he does have Swords Dance on it and Knockoff, which can hit the Latias pretty hard, but having Encore is really nice too, as if he just kind of whittles the Latias and forces it to recover, then he just locks him right in, and obviously has its other merits too against other Pokemon or different moves. So here he brings in the Latias again, and Akki is just going to go right for the Knockoff here. Does a pretty good amount of damage, but he's able to just knock him out with the Psyshock, and now he's probably in guaranteed range of like 3 Icicle Spears. I don't know about 2, because Latias is just so bulky. But like I said, he has a good chance to be able to pivot into this Mamoswine right now, as he brings in the Mamoswine, or brings in the Weavile, and he gets 3 Icicle Spears, and now he is looking like he's definitely out of range of 3 more hits. So here he's able to just go right for the safe Knockoff in case he wanted to stay in and predict the Icicle Crash, which he'd easily be able to take. But going for this Knockoff puts this Crook in guaranteed range of Icicle Crash, I'd imagine. So That right there could have been a bit of a 50-50. As it would give Aki one more chance. Like, let's say he went into Mamo on the Icicle Crash, he'd have one more chance to pivot back into Crook as a sack and bring in Mamoswine to go for the appropriate move. But it probably was not worth it, as if he double knocked there, or if he got enough damage off with Icicle Crash that, like, if Mamoswine needed to get like 4 more hits on the Icicle Spear later and didn't, and he'd be in range of 2 knockoffs, then it probably wouldn't be worth it. So he just lets the Crook go down here. So it's looking like this is going to come down to Icicle Spears, which is crazy because I just thought Aki had so much momentum, and it just seemed like he had been on the back foot for most of this game, and this Mamoswine just goes crazy. So, like, I really didn't expect this Weavile to be able to pivot in so many times and put this much pressure on Aki's team, as now he's up. Ben is up 2-1, and the Mamoswine comes in. So basically, Aki does not have Ice Shard. Let me just put that out here to make this a little more intense, because I didn't know, just being a watcher, obviously, I did know most of Aki's team, but he didn't have all the moves set when he showed me his build, and he didn't have Ice Shard on there. But I remembered when I played Aki the first time, way back when, he actually brought an Adamant Scarf Mamoswine back then and did have Ice Shard, which actually ended up saving him because I had the game in the bag, and he like high rolled my whole Lucha that was sweeping him with Ice Shard. And so I thought maybe there was a good chance that he'd have it, but it turns out he doesn't have the Ice Shard. So what this means is, if Weavile lives this next Icicle Spear, then he gets the knockoff, and Mamoswine has to take another knockoff, and then we'll go down to Psyshock for sure. He doesn't have Ice Shard, so it's not like he could potentially knock out the Latias with Ice Shard. I don't even think Latias would be in range of Ice Shard from that range, but obviously he could crit. So this is going to come down to whether he needs to get at least 3 Icicle Spears no matter what, because it's not like 2 Icicle Spear crits would even knock this Weavile out. So he needs to get 3 Icicle Spears no matter what. At least 3. And he would probably need to get a crit Icicle Spear out of those 3. I don't know if he could even get high enough rolls for this Weavile. Like, earlier on, I saw ones that said looked like they were doing... There might have been one that said it did 12. Let me just scroll back and see if... There was one that said it did 12. But, of course, it's unlikely, as all the other ones did less than 12. It's unlikely that he's going to get 3 of those higher rolls in a row. So it's basically looking like Aki either needs more than 3 hits or 3 hits and a crit to win this game. So we will see what happens. The game comes down to this turn. Icicle Spear 1, 11. Icicle Spear 2, 12. So he gets a little bit of a high roll in that next one. So if he gets this next high roll, then he probably knocks out the Weavile. But if he gets one a little bit lower, then the Weavile is going to live the 3. And the next one only does 10, so the Weavile is left at about, somewhere between 1 and 2%, and is going to be able to fire off the knockoff. No, he gets off the 4th Icicle Spear, and that's exactly what he needed, as he's able to just get 3 Icicle Spears on this Latias. I don't think the amount mattered, because I don't think a crit could knock out a Mamoswine from Psyshock. But wow, that was a crazy close and intense game. Aki was just so far ahead of him, but with the whole eject button Toxapex thing not working, I think that kind of shifted the momentum of the game a little bit, as Toxapex would have been really nice to keep pivoting into Weavile potentially, and just having another mon in general to be able to sack off so he could keep bringing in his Mamoswine and putting on the pressure, because every time he brought in Mamo, he essentially forced either a hard prediction or a sack on Ben's part. So that was an absolutely fantastic game, literally coming down to Icicle Spear rolls. Yeah, like, I don't know who technically had the better chance to win this statistically, because, for example, like, Aki went for, how many other Icicle Spears did he go for? He went for, yeah, I guess 2 other Icicle Spears, got only 3 rolls, or only 3 spears on both of those. Didn't get any crits. and generally got low rolls. So like if you factor in all of those things, then maybe it was in his favor to just get either some high rolls or a crit or a 4th Icicle Spear on that Weavile there. But in that moment in time, it was 75% chance that Weavile would not, or that Mamoswine would not get more than 3 rolls. And there's also like only a 4-point-something% chance of a crit each turn. So he needed to get really high rolls, which is very unlikely, a crit, which is very unlikely, or more than 3 rolls, which is only 25% chance. So that was just a crazy game. Like, also, if Aki got like 2 rolls on any of those Weavile Icicle Spears earlier on, then he still may have not have been able to win. As, for example, if he only got 4 in that last one, that Weavile probably would have lived it. So, just a crazy, crazy game. But that is your semifinals matchup for the X Conference, ladies and gentlemen. You have MaranVaran versus AkkiVGC. This is a rematch from earlier in the year. Maran was actually Aki's 2nd loss. I think that's his only other loss this season. I think he only had 2. So, they have kind of like a rubber game here, as Aki beat him in finals last year in ITL, or last season in ITL, and now Maran beat Aki this year in the regular season of the UDL. So they're having their rubber match in the semifinals of the X Conference, and the winner goes on to the finals. So we're excited to see the result of that next week. Now, finally, the last game that I have for you all, which is kind of weird. I did not expect to really be recording one of my own games anytime soon, because it's just been so long since I've done this sort of thing. But it's me going up against Blitzberg, otherwise known as Blitz, and his crazy psychic spam offense core. I mean, what's there to say about this match? I don't want to sit here and ramble on forever because this video is already over 40 minutes, but it's just hard to give thorough commentary without taking a long time, because if I don't take a long time, then I'm probably not explaining everything that, or most of the things at least, that should be explained for a thorough commentary. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of commenting on Pokemon battles, if you want to give an in-depth analysis. But oh well, I know it's when people see the length of the video, they're not going to want to watch, so I'm going to try not to go over an hour right now. But basically, I was really struggling in prep. I was kind of hoping that IA actually would have beaten Blitz just based on matchup alone, because obviously IA is a fantastic player. II rather, not IA. I always say that. He's a fantastic player, but so is Blitz. You know, they're both fantastic players, and they both have really good teams. But my offense was so good and reliable against where I just thought I could just spam a lot of my offense without much risk and drawback. Whereas going against Blitz, he has so many potential ways to pivot into lots of things and disrupt my team in ways that lose me so much momentum and gain him incredible momentum, because he just has so many offensive threats that my team is incredibly weak to, because my team is super frail. My steel type, I mean, obviously I have Lucario, but my steel type is Klefki, and my dark type is Drapion, both of which are not great switch-ins to things like Lele and Mega Alakazam, as they have plenty of ways they could try to take advantage of them. And then he's got Psychic Seed Hawlucha, he's got Z Kartana, he's got Crocodile, he has Suicune, which is really annoying against my team. Really annoying. Rotom Heat, which could be really annoying, which is why eventually I decided on bringing Seismitoad, because I just went through like 6 different teams trying to make the perfect team, and many more modifications than just 6. Excuse me. So I was really struggling because, for example, my 2 win conditions here, I have Scarf Serp and I have Lumberry Naga, which have really good matchups against his team. It's not like I just feel like I have no good Pokemon against him. It's just like outside of a couple win cons, I just feel like he has so many Pokemon in his team. The only thing on his team that I wasn't really worried about was Swadloon, and maybe I should have been more worried about that because obviously he could set up sticky webs. But outside of that one thing, he has the Rotom Heat, the Suicune, the Registeel, the Crook, the Kartana and Lucha, and even the Oricorio, which is really annoying for things like Medicham. And if he brings Defog, it could also be really a huge pain versus my team too. So I was struggling. I ultimately opted, I want to be weakest to Kartana. Even though I know he loves Kartana, I feel Kartana gives my win cons opportunities. So I'm going to choose to be weak to Kartana and leave my Zapdos at home. And basically the last modification I made was I had a Rindo Seismitoad because I'm kind of expecting the Z Giga Impact on the Kartana, but it turns out that Life Orb, like +2 Life Orb knockoff, would kill Zapdos, and I was a Chilanberry Zapdos, so +2 Z Giga Impact does not kill Zapdos after Rock, so it turns out that like Life Orb would just be way better versus me. So I opted to go with Focus Sash thanks to a last minute mock with Jolt I had on the Seismitoad with HP Fire, and I also have HP Fire on the Drapion, but I'm a Psychic Seed Drapion. I'm a Z Mesprit because I'm a Z Psyshock Mesprit because this Hawlucha could just go really, really crazy against me. And if he doesn't sub on my Z Psyshock, even though Z Psyshock is a special attack, Psyshock is just better against the Hawlucha in general, as Psychic Seed gives him the Spadef boost. And Z Psyshock does still kill. So I'm Z Psyshock with things like U-Turn and Healing Wish, Scarf Serp, Sash Toad with Hidden Power Fire and Stealth Rocks. I just figured Stealth Rocks are really important in this game, and having something that could pivot into things like Rotom, Crook, and Registeel would be really important because I was really struggling breaking those things down with something like Zapdos over it. Like I said, I'm the Lumberry Naga with Nasty Plot, Sludge Wave, Flamethrower, and Signal Beam, because Signal Beam is actually better against Crocodile and Mega Alakazam. And then finally a Light Clay, Dual Screens Klefki, but I'm also Spikes with Toxic, as Priority Toxic can be really nice as emergency buttons versus certain threats against his team. And mostly Spikes are really, really useful here. So I know I've been spamming screens all year, but there's just kind of an emergency button in this game. I'll just set them up if I feel I'm in a good position to, but I'm not really relying on them as much as usual. So we'll get right into the game. I'm going to lead with the Seismitoad because, like I said, I'm so weak to Kartana that leading with it is probably something kind of enticing. So I'm leading with this, and now I do not want to just waste my Focus Sash lure this early, even though just getting up Stealth Rocks is really, really nice. Klefki takes hits from Lele really, really well. So I'm going to switch into Klefki as he actually pulls out the Taunt, and that's really bad because I don't have any attacking moves, so I am kind of forced to just go hard into my Drapion and burn my Psychic Seed right away, which is something I kind of wanted to save for later. But he does just go right for a Psychic, which is nice that he didn't get any damage on me, because that does still kind of help me check either Lele or Zam later. As I'm actually going to go hard for a knockoff right here, as nothing really wants to switch into it. Even something like Crook that could take it really easily, I can remove its item, which actually turns out to be Choice Scarf, which is fantastic, because that means if I weaken this Crook, something like Naga could potentially set up on it by coming in, knocking it out with Signal Beam, and getting up the +1 speed. So here I'm going to go right into Seismitoad, as I was kind of expecting him to attack there, but he actually goes for Rock. So he was Scarf Rocks Crook, as I have actually seen him bring Scarf Rocks on a couple of things this season, so, or just a couple things in general. So this was a turn that I had to think about a little bit, because weakening this Crook is really nice. Like I said, for Naga, I could just click something like Surf here, as nothing really wants to take that. Like even something like Kartana takes like 40% from Surf, which could be kind of nice, getting that much damage. So I'm kind of deciding here on whether I want to get my Stealth Rocks up or just click the safe Surf if he wants to get some damage off. But he decides to preserve his Crook, and he actually goes right into the Kartana. So I get up my Rocks, and I am just like, oh my god. I literally think I might have said oh my god out loud, as this could not be any better, as this is the biggest threat to my team in terms of breaking power. Like, this thing could just go absolutely nuts. Like, when I finally kind of made this team, at first I didn't have Rindo on Seismitoad, but I was finally starting to feel a lot more comfortable in my mocks. But then I had a mock against II, I keep doing that, and he led with Cart and just blew me away. So I realized that I just need a little bit more for Cart, so I packed the HP Fire on Drapion and HP Fire plus Sash on Seismitoad. So this could not go any better right now, because even if he is Life Orb or Banned, I'm guaranteed to live with the Sash, or even if he gets a crit because of Leaf Blade. So he does just go right for the Leaf Blade, And I do live with the Sash. And I do get off the HP Fire, which is absolutely massive, as that was just such a massive threat to my team. As I'm actually going to save the Seismitoad here as a sack, as that will just help me with gaining so much momentum against his team, as he actually goes right for the Psychic with the Lele, as I'm just going to go right for a Light Screen, because even if he wanted to taunt, I could easily pivot back into my Drapion now, as I could play a little more recklessly with this, because I don't have to worry about burning my Psychic Seed, which is something I normally was a little hasty, or not hasty, I was normally a little weary of doing, and didn't want to be too hasty with. But now that it's already been burnt, getting up the Light Screen, I could take hits from that very easily and just start firing off knockoffs, because his whole team is not going to appreciate it. So because he didn't taunt me on the previous turn, I decided I'm going to get up a Spike, and then I'm going to switch out as my Drapion can take hits from this really easily. So I'm going to go right into the Drapion here, as he actually goes right for the Calm Mind with the Lele. So I'm just going to go right for the Whirlwind, because I'm expecting him not to want to taunt me, as a knockoff could do a good amount of damage, and obviously he's only seen knockoff from me, so if I have Poison Jab, then he's going to take a lot from that, and I'm behind a Light Screen. So I'm just going to go right for the Whirlwind, expecting him not to taunt, and that works out really well, as he brings in the Crook, making that take more damage, and now it brings in the Registeel, which is nice, as the Registeel has the leftovers. Is here he's going to go for Protect, and I actually go right for the knockoff, but I'm going to do it again, because I really want to weaken this Registeel, as things are looking pretty good for my Naga, as it could take any hit from Registeel really easily. And like I said, I'm Lumberry in case he wants to run Thunder Wave, which, as you're going to see, I go for the knockoff. Now on this turn, I go for Whirlwind, thinking, oh, he's just got Earthquake. That's not doing too much. I'm just going to Whirlwind and shuffle him around a little bit more, as he actually goes right for the Thunder Wave. And I do get the Whirlwind off through the Paralysis, but that's good, because now I know the Thunder Wave is going to be his way to try to stop Naga, which means that makes that Reggie potentially set up fodder for me. So here he's going to go into Lucha. I don't expect him to have sub, but even if he does have sub, it's not the worst thing in the world here, because he's not going to be able to burn his Psychic Seed if he subs, so he can't even touch Mesprit. And also, I'm not in range of High Jump Kick with my Jiraiya, my Drapion, so I'm going to go right for knockoff, because if I can knock off his Psychic Seed, then I could totally negate any potential Psychic Seed shenanigans later on in the game. So he's actually going to switch right back out, go into Crook, and I'm going to get off the knockoff, getting lucky not getting paralyzed again, but obviously that wouldn't have mattered much, as it only did 6%. He already lost his item. So now I can finally sock off the Toad, and this puts me in a great position, because I can go right into my Takasugi Shinsuke, one of my favorite characters in all of anime, and these are all Gintama nicknames, by the way, if you guys aren't familiar with the series. Best anime of all time. You should definitely watch it. I'm going to go right for the Signal Beam here, because if he goes into Registeel, Signal Beam plus Hazards plus Nasty Plot puts him in guaranteed range of +2 Flamethrower. But if I just Signal Beam the Crook and knock it out, at least it puts me at +1, and if his next play is Registeel, being afraid of something like being afraid of going into Alakazam, being afraid of like a Draco Meteor knocking him out or something, because if he's not very bulk invested, I could knock him out with Draco or something, then he could just Thunder Wave it, and Naga is no more of a threat really, although I do have the Healing Wish in the back. So after the hazard damage, I counted all of the damage he took. Like, I went back and made sure that I felt confident in making this play. With all the damage he took, including his leftovers recovery and everything, this Registeel after all this should be a little under 61%, which means a +2 Flamethrower from Naga should have around a 60% chance to knock it out. He's also got to hit 2 Thunder Waves, which isn't that hard to do because it's 90%, but he's still got to hit 2. And like I said, I do have Healing Wish on Mesprit in the back, and I have Scarf Superior here. So as long as I can deal with the Hawlucha, Scarf Superior with Hazards up just goes absolutely insane here. So I'm starting to feel pretty confident, as if I get this roll with the Flamethrower, then I am most likely just going to be able to win here on the spot. As he does Thunder Wave, we do get the Paralysis cured, and we risk the roll and get it, as your Los Angeles Reshiram are going to be able to pull away with this one, as he already says, GG. He does not have enough Spadef investment to be able to take it on the rest of his Pokemon. Even with the Psychic Seed, Hawlucha does have a good chance to even be taken out after 1 round of Stealth Rock. So after 2 rounds, he's in guaranteed range of +2 Sludge Wave, as now we are at +3. The Alakazam is in guaranteed range. Trace of that Beast Boost, which could be super threatening, but obviously we have Signal Beam, which hits it even harder. So Takasugi, Naganadel, I don't know how you want to say it. There's so many different ways you can pronounce it. It's like Naganadel, Naganadel, Naganadel. No, that one definitely is ruled out. The first 3 are viable, I think, but the last one does not sound right. So, has just really been such an amazing Pokemon for me this year. During the regular season, it went 13-3 in like 5 or 6 games, and like sometimes it didn't even come in. So I think it only played 5 games, went 13-3, and both of those, or 2 of those kills, or 2 of those deaths rather, were due to hacks. Where one time it was crit by a Scarf Greninja through Light Scream, and then another time it literally was about to 6-0 just from turn 1 pretty much. My opponent just had nothing for it, and on the very last turn it missed its Draco Meteor on a Zygarde and got taken out. So if you factor in those to like kills and make it 15-1 or even 13-3, whatever you want to look at it. Now in this game, how many of the KOs did it get? It killed Crook. So yeah, it literally killed the entire team except Kartana. So it got 5 more kills in this game. So it's at either 18-3 or 20-1, whatever, however you kind of want to look at it, which is just absolutely insane. I know a lot of people are starting to think we should ban this thing, and honestly, I am kind of starting to think so too. But wow, that game could not have gone more perfectly, because in my mocks, they really did not go this smoothly. But hey, I put in lots and lots of time and effort, and it really did end up paying off, as for example, like that HP Fire lure on Seismitoad with the Focus Sash just worked out so well. I couldn't have asked for that to work out any better, and it just put me in a spot where even if I did not knock out the Registeel and he got the second T-Wave off of me, even if I never Healing Wished it back up, I think Scarf Surf would have had a great chance to just be able to win. So I'm pretty confident that I would have been able to win the game if I didn't get the roll. But still, like, the roll was in my favor. I got it, and Naka just went absolutely insane. So shout outs to Takasugi. I love him. I love him to death. And that's right, you're St. Louis. I said St. Louis both times. You're Los Angeles Reshiram's. Actually, I don't remember what I said the first time, but your Los Angeles Reshiram's are moving on to the Y Conference semifinals. And like I mentioned earlier, that game will be being played Tuesday because of Gypsy needing to travel. And yeah, so it'll either be myself versus Parker, who I legitimately have not played in like 3 years. I've only played him once, but it was literally probably around 3 years ago. And the one and only, the Gypsy King. Even though I actually found out recently he's not the only Gypsy King. Apparently Tyson Fury, the heavyweight boxer, who's now starting a program in WWE, is also nicknamed the Gypsy King. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. He's jocking my boy. But yeah, either way, whoever wins, I'm excited. I'm just really happy that we made it to the top 4, because I don't know, it just feels like a good return for me. Obviously, I'm not trying to just lose in semis. I obviously am going to try my best to win and go further, but going undefeated in the regular season, basically the last game was just a meme game with II. So basically going 7-0 and then making it to the semis, especially with a matchup that I thought was really difficult to prep for, is definitely something that I'm proud of. I think it was a good return for me, and it's one that I'm looking to take even further. Hopefully I could make it to the finals and maybe even further than that. But right now I just got to focus on my next opponent, which has not been revealed yet. So that is going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you stay tuned for the following games coming up, as they're sure to be hype. So that's it. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.